All right, this is just a little introduction to reloading. Probably about 30 years ago, I got into reloading because my wife and I both started concealed carrying, and we go to the range every Friday night with a bunch of friends. We get together after work and go out and do some target practice. And, we'd usually go through, I guess, between 300 and 500 rounds a night. So it started getting expensive to buy that kind of ammo, so I just decided to jump into reloading back then because of the cost. Now this is just just kind of basics of reloading I'm going through and showing you what equipment I use. And there's a Dillon Square Deal B that I use. You need something to actually size and put the bullets together, as I'll show you in a little while. And then there's another a Dillon RL 550, and that one's actually for rifle rounds. The Square Deal will only deal with pistol rounds. And then you're going to need to buy some bullet tips, and you will get quite an assortment over the years. And one of the main things is you're going to have to invest in some of the books for the manufacturer's bullets, and you're also going to invest in a bunch of different powders depending on what you're reloading. Now, basically in reloading, a couple components of the bullet, and basically you're going to reuse the brass there, and that's it in the end. You're going to have to buy bullets, the bullet heads there, and you're also going to have to buy primers, and they go in there just to set off the powder itself. And then you're going to have to invest in different powders, and there are many different powders on the market, and you have to develop your loads and go by the bullet manufacturer's recommendations. Now, let's say you go to the round, and I bring these plastic bags to put the bullets in. You go to the range, and you come home and you got this bag of bullets, and they've all been shot out, but they're pretty dirty. They're all expanded, and they're really no good at this point. So basically the first thing that I'll do is I'll just start up my tumbler here. I've got this little tumbler, and all it does is you dump the brass casings in there, and it just shakes them up with some cleaning media and cleans them. So I'm going to put corn cob in here. That's what I use mostly. It's like a ground up corn cob, and it actually has a special brass polish that won't break down the brass. So that I'm just going to put in there, and then I'm going to start it up and let it run for a couple hours usually. Now, there are many other ways to clean brass. I'm just showing you how I do it. There are ultrasonic cleaners and all kinds of stuff on the market now. This equipment's all over 30 years old, so, it's kind of old technology, but it still works, and I never had any problems with it. So there you can see the brass just shakes around. I'm going to put the top on. Makes it a little bit quieter so you don't have to listen to it. And just walk away and let it run for a couple hours. So, basically the first thing I always start by doing is just trying to clean the brass, and because you're going to have to inspect it next. And I also try to keep it sorted by how many times it's been fired too. And there's a corn cob that I use, and that one's treated. There's some plain corn cob that hasn't been treated yet. And then also I use walnut. If I just have shells I want to polish up a little bit, I use some ground walnut shells there, and that works really good. And you can also polish other things with this type of equipment too. So cleaning the brass is an important part, and some people actually anneal it too. I do not for pistol loads. So I'm not even going to get into that. But then basically, when you're getting ready to set up a caliber, you're going to need different die sets for your different calibers. There's a die set in the machine now for 9 millimeters. There's a 44 Magnum, 44 Special die set. And there's also a 357 38 Special die set I've got out here on the bench now to show you. This little Square Deal B only does pistol calibers, but you need sizing dies, you need flaring dies, you need powder dies, and you also need that little pin there for removing the primer. And there's a tool head that you also need that goes with the die sizes. So there is a considerable investment to get going. So if you're not going to, go out and do a lot of shooting, it really may not pay to get involved with this. Then you also need different primer feeders. You have different size primers, which I'll show you in a second, and you have to make sure the machine is set up with the right size primer, and also you have different powder measurement devices, and you have to make sure that the machine is set up for the proper load. And basically, on this one, when you pull the lever down, it does everything pretty much. I'll go through that in a second. But this one here actually indexes. If you watch it, the bullet will index to the next station if you see that plate down in there turning. So that makes this one very quick and easy to use for pistol rounds. Where this other one's got a really long throw, and it'll do like 4-inch long rifle shells, but it does not index. You have to flip it with your thumb to turn it. So that's a big difference between them. They both have different purposes. Now you're going to want to invest in some really good books to go with whatever bullets you choose, and that does get quite expensive because these, are not just cheap volumes, and they do give you loads to start with. And you always want to try to start with those ballparks and work your way around to the best loads for your gun from there. But you do not want to change the numbers very much. It's best if you have a chronograph to check your bullets, but you're also going to have to buy, bullets, and you can buy them in bulk, for the cheap target rounds, or you can get into better, higher quality ones for higher velocity hunting type rounds and stuff like that, more accurate rounds. And like I said, each one you're going to want the book. You're going to want to go by the recommendations for all the powder types and the different velocities and stuff, and work out what's best for your gun. I'm not really going to go into that right now. But, so you can see you do get a pretty good investment in stuff like that. And then the other good thing about reloading is you can get into some strange things. Like these are little plastic capsules that you fill with birdshot, basically. Little lead shot, put the cap on, and then what I do is I use them in, those are 357 cartridges. I put them in there. And you just use the primer to fire them. And you have to be very careful when you're crimping them that you don't shatter them. But these are good for like snakes. If you have a problem with snakes or rats or something like that, they're real good shots for that. Now, one thing that was stressed to me for my pistol training was for carrying. You always want to use commercially available loads. You want to buy, a good known load from a known manufacturer, and those are basically the ones that I use when I carry. So, you don't want to carry home loads on that. And also, here's some of those shot shells that I buy pre-made in 22s. And these are, they're fun for actually shooting down those big-ass bees that you get. Those giant bees that bore into wood. Now, one thing I did do when I started reloading was I got a book and I started putting together records of everything that I did. You always want to know each batch is going to be a little bit different, and you always want to be able to track them and tell, because if you have problems with one bullet in that batch, there's a good chance you're going to want to get rid of them all, and you're going to have problems with all of them. So, I would say always keep really good records of everything that you load. And I actually, along with these records I keep, I label each box so I know what's in it. I know, what to expect when I shoot it and stuff like that. And if I ever have a problem, I can pull the whole batch and take it apart. Now, when you get into reloading, another big investment is primers, depending on what caliber you're going to use. These are just some of the pistol ones. I've got pistol, small pistol, magnum, small pistol, regular primers, large pistol, regulars, and large pistol magnums. And they're just the little devices that set off the gunpowder. They get hit by the firing pin on the gun. And they come in all different types of packages, but usually you buy them by the package of 100, and there you can see they're carefully packaged because these are dangerous. These are explosive devices, so you really have to be careful when you're handling stuff like this. Reloading can be very dangerous if not done properly. And there you can see there's just a little assortment of some of them that I've got. And these lately have become quite hard to find, so if you do get into reloading, whenever you see some, grab them, because they're always on the shortage list, and they're one of your main things that you're going to need. You can't reload without them. And I'm just going to show you how I put the primers in my machines here. And basically I've got these trays that they call flip trays, and then I've got these tubes that they just call primer tubes, and what they are is they've got a little plastic end on the end of them, and they're all for different size primers and pistol primers and rifle primers depending on what you're reloading. And you want to pick the right size one for the primer you're doing, and always want to know exactly which primer you're using. And then this is a very boring process where you have to load up this tube with, I put 100 primers in at a time, so I can do reload 100 rounds at a time. And basically you just do the round side on them, and you just pop them, pick them up with the round side up, and you'll see some of them are upside down there on the tray, but I'm not going to worry about them now. I'm just going to, keep picking up the round ones there, and just push down gently, and they go up in the tube there, and that's how I load my primers. Then if you once I get all the round ones, I'll just flip it over and get the other ones with the round ones up, and then same thing. I'm trying to do it here right-handed, but really when I do it left-handed, you can do this really quick. But this is one of the things you have to worry about now. Some machines actually load them in one at a time too, but mine does multiples. And then once you fill the tube, you take it and stick it over in the machine. I'll show you in a second, but there you can see all the primers just slide right down into the actual reloader, and that's the spot there. There's an alarm on it, so you know when you're out of primers, and you just put that in there. You pull that pin, and the 100 primers drop down, so you're ready to do 100 loads. And at this point in time, you're dealing with some dangerous hot stuff once you start loading it up like that. I'm not actually putting any primers in it right now for this video. So these here, I just let them run for an hour. I didn't want to wait too long for the video. They're not really done being cleaned. They could use a little bit more, but I just wanted to show you kind of the results that you get with this corn cob. They are fairly clean, not quite super polished, and the inside's not quite 100% polished, but so that's what that thing does. It just shakes them with the corn cob, and you use the corn cob over and over again too. And then I have this guy here for getting the corn cob out of them. I started out with this. It looks like a little gold pan with holes in the bottom, but that's just too slow when you're going to, do a couple thousand at a time. So with this, you just dump it all into that basket in the middle. And, like I said, this is the equipment that I use. And there may be better stuff out there or newer stuff out there now, but, it still works for me, so that's what I still use. And then I'm just going to take and crank that around, and you can see how it kind of bangs everything together and gets all the corn cob out of them. And actually it gets this thing, actually moves them around enough that they gets them all out of the inside of them too. So a couple spins around, and they're all separated. And there's what that brass looks like. I'll just dump it in the bucket here. And it's not quite 100% polished, but it's pretty close to it. And then at this point in time, it really gets boring for me because I'll try to shake if there's anything else in there. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to start inspecting each shell. When you reuse brass, sometimes you'll get brass that gets hard and cracks, and you never ever want to use those shells over again. So I really inspect each piece. Right now you'll see they're a little bit enlarged from firing, but you really want to look for any kind of defects and mark them how many times you fired them too. And then I just stick that corn cob back in the bucket there, and I just use it over and over again. And I use this Dillon polish on it too. That works pretty good. Now at this point in time, I usually go through and I pick through them, and I try to pick out all the best ones and separate them by manufacturer if it's easy to do, and then I'll put them in bags of 100. And these are just some old ones that I've already bagged up and polished. I like to keep them in batches of 100 because it's easy when I'm reloading, and that way I'm all ready to go. I know I've got no cracks, and I also know how many times they've been fired, so I know how hot I can load them for the next time. And I mean, I've gotten like 6-7 times out of 9mm and stuff like that. If you want to load really hot rounds, you're going to buy new brass and start with that, and then keep going down from there. But you can see I pretty much try to keep track of everything and what state it's at, and what I can really load it with. And then you're just going to take, and I'm not putting powder in now, but you're going to fill that tube up there with powder, and you've preset your powder charge on these. That's another thing I'm not going to get into right at this side, but basically you got primers, you got powder, you got your brass casings, and you've got some bullets to put in, and it's time to just start reloading. So I'm just going to kind of do this. You can see that there's a 9mm that's a little bit, it's oversized from being fired, but first thing you do is you put it in and it goes down, and you pull that die down, and it goes up in a die, and it gets resized to the proper diameter, and then it also gets a primer taken out, and then when it goes to the next station, you push up the handle and it gets a new primer put in. So it's pretty much all automatic now once the machine is loaded up. And then you're over here and you're at the powder station, and the casing goes up, you can see, and it opens up that powder die and fills the puts the correct amount of powder in, and it bells out the mouth to put your bullet in at the same time for the next step. But at this point here, I'll remove that and I'll check the weight of the powder for the first couple of passes just to make sure everything is set correct. You can never be too safe when you're reloading. Then once you know everything's right, it goes to the next station, and you have to manually just drop a bullet in there, and it's all belled out and everything ready to go. So what you're going to do now, you've got this die all set properly to push the bullet into the proper depth. And there you can see it's pushed in, and now the next one's indexing and putting primers in, so it's all pretty much automatic, and this machine really does go quick. And then you're going to go up and you're going to actually crimp the end of that brass onto the bullet and kick it out. That's basically, how long it takes. Well, if you're doing it, you can crank them out really quick. I didn't put a primer in it, and I didn't put powder in it, but, I just thought I'd show you exactly, what goes on there. And I mean, there are other presses to use. And then you want to go back when it's done. And first couple of them, I always check carefully because you can make adjustments at this point. And there are gauges to make sure it'll chamber in your gun, and to make sure it's not too long, that'll hang up feeding or anything like that. And I just kind of like to inspect the first couple of them and, make sure the crimp is good and everything looks good on them. And then you're pretty much ready to go. And there you can see that little tiny crimp on there that holds a bullet in. So once you've got that all set, you can just you can go through and load 5,000 if you want now. Just take your time, and it goes really quick. So there it's going to show you, like, there's just one of the things you have to do. You have to set the bullet in, and then it goes up and it gets pushed in, and then it goes up the next one and it gets crimped and comes out. In the meantime, you've got, other ones following behind it normally, but so with this machine, it's easy now. There are single stage presses and stuff if you're only going to do a couple, but if you shoot the quantity that my wife and I used to, you're going to want something multi-stage. And that's what happens if you get a 40 caliber mixed up when you're doing 9mm. So those dies really will resize a lot, and that's one thing you don't ever want to do. Now, if you mess up a load or have a problem or any doubt whatsoever, you don't want to fire the load to get it apart. There's really nothing else you can do other than take it apart. So I have this little brass, or this little hammer here. It's made out of plastic, actually. You put the bullet in with the bullet facing down, and then you hit it up. Well, I'm hitting it on a rubber pad there. That's really stupid. I hit the bench there, and I'll show you. And the bullet actually popped right out, and the powder will actually come right out, and that way you can take the bullet apart without any chance of setting the primer off and killing yourself. And there you can see it. Pretty much, it's about the safest way to get a bullet apart. And if there's any doubt about the amount of powder or anything, you always want to take them apart and check and start over, because having a load that doesn't have enough powder in is just as dangerous as having a load that has too much powder in. So, this is another good tool to have if you're going to do any kind of reloading. Otherwise, there's no way to deal with anything that something goes wrong with. And again, you always want to have some. I have two of these Dillon scales. They're extremely accurate scales, and I do double check all my loads. And even for if you're going to do rifles and do them one at a time, you can just trickle the powder in there and then pour it right into the cartridge and load from there too. But you definitely want accurate scales. I did have a digital one, but that didn't impress me that much. I went back to these guys. Now this other press here is, as you can see, it's got like 4 inches of clearance in there, so you could do like a 50 caliber rifle round in there. You can see just how much throw it has, and it does not turn automatically. You have to index it every time, so it's a little bit slower press, but it's got a whole different meaning to it. And it uses pretty much the same primer feed, the same powder type measure, and everything else. So it does the same thing, just a little bit slower. Now, one thing you want to watch out for, like when you buy rifle ammo, some of it will come in steel if you buy the cheap Russian stuff, and some of it will be in brass and be reloadable. The steel stuff has got different primers in it, and it's just not reloadable. You throw that in the garbage, recycle it. Where the brass can be reused again over and over again, and with rifle rounds it should be annealed, but I'm not going to get into that. So you can get these. Used to be able to get those cheap steel 762s for like about 6-7 cents a piece loaded. Now the price has gone up, but they're really good woodchuck rounds. And these are those primer tubes. And one word of warning: if you ever load primers in them and something happens, the primer turns sideways and gets stuck or something like that, they say don't even mess with them trying to get them out. What I'm told is flood them with WD-40 and dispose of them and throw them away and get new ones, because primers can be extremely dangerous in a tube like that. So basically, you're going to need to buy some books. You're going to need to buy some cleaning equipment. You're going to need to buy some loading equipment. Whatever way you decide to go, you're going to need some media for cleaning, whether it be ultrasonic or corn cob or something like that. And you have to decide on what calibers you're going to load. So, that's all going to be part of picking out your equipment. And then you definitely need some really good scales, because this is the part that is going to make your loads good and safe. And then you're going to have to buy primers, and you're going to have to invest in bullets, and usually a bunch of different ones if you do, different type of shooting. And then, you're going to have to figure out a way to track things and keep them clean. And these ammo cans, actually, they used to be like $3 a piece, and you could buy them by the 100 at a time. But they work really good for, keeping brass in also. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of, what I've got for reloading. And, you're going to need several types of powder, too, depending on what you're going to be reloading. So I just figured I'd start out with this one, just kind of giving you an idea of what's involved in, getting going with reloading. And definitely it's not cheap. I think originally I dumped probably about $5,000 in machines, bullets, and parts to get going. So you really have to shoot a lot to make it worthwhile. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.